everybody. Today we've got a very, very special guest on our show, Shivali Beakta. And Shivali has many interesting things on her plate, but probably one thing that I'd like to really speak to her about is fear, obviously, because this is Break Fear, Find Freedom, right? But I'd like to speak more about strength. She has this whole thing about strength, like what is strength really? And that plays a lot with fear, break fear, and as you know, like woman empowerment and all these beautiful things. So let's just leave it at that for now. This is Carina, Break Fear, Find Freedom, and our beautiful guest, Shivali Beakta. Hello, Shivali. How are you today?
I'm good. Thank you for inviting me.
You're welcome. Thank you for being here.
Absolutely.
So we will speak about fear and freedom whenever that comes up. But I think one of the things that I've seen that you probably that resonates so much with you is strength.
Yeah.
And that for me is such a weird kind of word because it just has so many influences, you know, we have cultural influences and society and teachers and all sorts of things. And of course, being a woman as well, and I'm not bringing in any sexist, or we're not going in down the political route, okay? We're just talking about these nuances. What is your take on it?
I think so. My definition of what it means to be strong has evolved over the years. It started off as, you know, to not be weak, to not give up, thinking of strength as, you know, someone who's very physically tough, mentally tough, never breaks down, never has a bad day. And that creates its own, you know, a whole host of challenging emotions with that. It's hard because you're like constantly fighting the flow. You're constantly walking uphill, and that's never fun. Or it wasn't for me, at least, not at all. And so over the last year, 2 years, this definition has changed for me because of my experience, because I struggled with trying to be strong and really struggling with it, not finding a way to live up to that. And now strength is more about the ability to feel your emotions, to feel weak whenever you need to feel weak, and find a way to move through that. Like, it's not anymore about shutting down emotions and not being emotional, but about inviting the emotions in and working with them, working your way through that.
Oh, I love that, because it's more internal, because it is, you know, when you think of strength, you think of people lifting up cars, you know, and and fighting. It's that constant fighting with yourself, and that constant conflict that is exhausting, actually. And then you wonder why, I need to sleep right now, because you're constantly fighting all the time. Yeah. So this is beautiful, because you're just like going with the flow, and it makes more sense.
Absolutely. And I think the narrative externally is such that, you know, being strong, no one tells you that it's okay to be weak. It's okay to feel bad. You know, everybody's like, get up, get going, and hustle hard. And that didn't work for me, honestly. Still doesn't work.
Yes. There's this whole thing, especially on the internet. I mean, because there's all this hustle. You must hustle. You have to have this. You have to have all these different income streams, and you've just got to work. Yeah. And it just puts so much pressure on, because then when you are feeling your feelings, or when you are feeling that weakness, you think, oh no, like I'm such a bad person. What am I doing? While everybody else is succeeding and doing such wonderful things, I'm this bad person, which of course is all, the narrative is all messed up.
No, but that's so true, that it's that good and bad, that something's wrong with me if I feel weak. Something's wrong with me if I fail. Because again, I think the good and bad says when you win, you're good. When you feel good, you know, so we reject, in a way, I think, those emotions and those states where we fail and feel weak, etc.
Yes. Yes. Yeah. And of course we can go back and say, well, it's society as well. And the way we've been brought up also makes a big, has a big impact on the way we live our lives. But the exciting part is that we can change it like you have. And I'm sure, how has that shift of definition, how's it shifted in your life, and how's your life changed since you have come to that shift?
My God, it's so relaxing. It's so relaxing to just exist and not have to constantly fight the flow. I sometimes think of it as rowing versus sailing. Like I was in a boat and I was rowing upstream. And it was really hard and constantly getting irritated with myself because I wanted to get somewhere. I was putting in all the work, but couldn't get there. And so being strong meant keep doing what you're doing.
Yes.
Feel the pain, but do it anyway. Right. You know, those quotes and narratives. And so now I try to be in the sailing mode as much as possible, and it's easier. It's less stressful, and there are more insights that show up for me through that because, shockingly, it's allowed me to be more present. And you know, listen in to what's going on within me, and it's a new experience, but it's a really good one.
Yes, I love that. And it's almost then, because then you can hear the whisperings of your soul or the universe or whatever you believe in. So that's beautiful, because then you just flow, of course, because you're listening to where you need to go.
Yeah, I think that's so true, isn't it? I think when you're rowing, it's the wounded self, it's the ego wanting to do something. And I think the moment you let go, that voice, that's maybe your ego, quiets down and you just start paying attention to other things.
Yes. That constant fighting. Well, I'm loving this, but I've just realized that I haven't asked you the big question. So Shivali, tell us a bit about who Shivali is. I know we're doing this a bit backwards, but...
Ooh, okay, that's a loaded question. A little bit about who Shivali is.
Right.
Shivali is a constant work in progress. And as much as I want to define who she is, I think the more I become whoever I need to become, I realize that definitions and labels limit me. Right. So I think I'm a work in progress and someone who's just trying to find her way through life. I've got different roles in life, but you know, just for the purposes of, I guess, our discussion, other than the fact that I work, I podcast, I write, I think more than anything, just someone who's trying to find her way through life. I hope that answers your question.
Yes. No, of course it does, because we always work in progress, right? So we work and then life happens and then we redefine ourselves and then we change and then we go on to another path, and that's what makes it exciting.
Yeah.
Tell us a bit about your podcast. Now that we're talking about podcasts, we on the podcast, right? Unbox Yourself. I love the title.
Oh, thank you. Unbox Yourself is, so the question that we're trying to answer is how to be yourself and what gets in the way, more importantly.
Yes.
And the idea came to me in 2019, and I sat on it for, you know, a good 2-3 years before I actually started working on it. Mm-hmm. And so we're trying to gradually build it and just trying to find answers to questions like what gets in the way, what does the inner critic look like, what does strength mean, what does it mean to fail, etc., etc. So we're exploring a whole host of topics.
I love that because it's always unbox yourself. I suppose you do that all the time. I mean, what does it mean to be you today? You know, like today, we're in this interaction. It'll change everything because we're having this interaction. So the next few minutes, the next day will be different because we've had this interaction. But even then, you know, it's an exciting question to look at.
Absolutely. And I feel like every day gives us the opportunity to get to know ourselves a little bit better, unbox ourselves a little bit more.
Yes.
So yeah.
Yes, I love that. It's so important to do that inner work all the time. And I know sometimes it sounds so hard, and it is.
It is for sure.
But if you can just look at the mirrors, if you can look at the mirrors and clear it up, your life just becomes, every day becomes like really like the flow, and it's just so beautiful. And you don't get triggered as much, right?
Yes.
That's the best part.
Yes, that is the best part for sure. Yeah. But it does take a lot of, like you said, it does take a lot of hard work in terms of not just hard work, but willingness to sit down and look at the things that you need to look at. Because it's so easy to, ignore and get lost in the distractions of life.
Yes. And for me, it's so funny because the things come up and I ignore it. Okay, ignore it. But then what comes up with it? Procrastination, resistance, and all these things. And then it's like, oh no, and we go back to that strength thing where you start beating yourself up because why are you procrastinating? Why are you? And on one level, on intuitive level, why are you doing it?
Yeah.
But it's easy to just pretend, right?
Yeah.
And it doesn't work that way.
Yeah, for sure.
So tell us what else. So you write as well?
Yep. So I write for the podcast. I write in general for myself to organize and structure my thoughts. I write about random ideas that come to me. So writing is a very therapeutic process for me. Mm-hmm. It's not just a creative outlet. It's like I love the feeling of zoning out and writing something. It's never perfect. Sometimes it doesn't make sense, but the process is always enjoyable. So yeah, I try to do that every single day.
So that's nice. So it's like similar to journaling, I suppose, or... Yeah.
So I journal, I write for the podcast. Maybe I'll write a book. But yeah, I think it's a great creative outlet. I would recommend writing to everyone.
Yes. Yes, for me, I mean, I love writing as well. And for me, I don't know if you would find as well, that sometimes when I write, it's like an automatic kind of thing, right? Yeah. And as you're writing, it's almost like you're speaking to your higher self or to God or source or whoever you speak to, and the answers just come out. So it's in that way, it's also very exciting. It's a very exciting process. And then you go back and you think, what? I wrote that, really?
Yeah.
Or sometimes it's like, that doesn't make sense to me.
Yeah, for sure. But sometimes it's also, when you're overwhelmed or the brain is too busy and you just start dumping your thoughts on a piece of paper, it's shocking how quickly the mind clears.
Yes.
And you're like, okay, I'm done with this now.
Yes. Yeah. If only people would try it out and realize how therapeutic and what a beautiful tool it is.
Yeah. Do you journal often?
I do.
Yeah,
I do. I write a lot. I mean, I try and write every day. A lot of the stuff I haven't published, so I have to actually go back and publish it. I've just published my book. So
very nice.
So that was exciting. It was also one of those books that took forever to write because of you have to go through all those the process, all the self, the rejection, the fear, the everything.
Oh yeah.
And then eventually it's like, oh, just publish it and get over it, and done with it, because I'm sick of it now.
Yeah. What was your biggest lesson from writing the book?
I think the resistance for me is great.
Yeah.
And the fear of rejection, right? It's really
I'm
terrible.
with you on that.
But the problem is it just weighs on you for so long that, you don't realize, and I don't know why you have, like for me, it's this, why do I have to punish myself? Why don't I just do it and then it gets out the way, right? And then that resistance goes.
Yeah.
But so that was the biggest thing. It was the fear of rejection and it was the story, and you also think, well, what will people think? Like, what will people think of me? And what will my mother think? Or what will my family think? And
how did you navigate that? I'm very curious. How did you navigate that fear of rejection and what people will think?
Well, eventually I wrote it, and then I've got my co-host. He's not here today. My co-host eventually was saying, you know what, maybe you should publish this. And there's those hints. So eventually I closed my eyes. I have to admit this now. I was tempted to just press delete after all that work, but instead I pressed publish. And I mean, I haven't really, because now the work begins where I have to actually market it, and that's something that I'm still working on. Okay. So I've published it, and I've sort of mentioned, and I've been like, it's been out there a bit, but I haven't done the actual marketing like I know I have to do so I can actually sell copies. Yeah. So I'm still resisting on a level, and I'm still rejecting myself on a level.
But I have to say that is a huge win. Just publishing something and at least for that moment getting over the fear of rejection, that's worth celebrating for sure.
Yes.
I know it is quite a struggle.
It's a big struggle. And you know what the sad part is? Once I did that, I didn't even celebrate because it was like, oh, okay, so I've done it, big deal. And that's sad on some level.
Yeah. No, you should definitely plan to celebrate. I think that's a big deal.
Yes. Yeah. So when's your book coming out?
Hopefully in a year, if I can get my thoughts together and get over the fear of rejection. I've given myself a year to think through it, put some work behind it, and then we'll see what happens.
So what's the book about? I mean, I know it's a year, but you can give us a sort of idea, and no one will hold it to you because it'll change and it'll morph.
It will definitely change and morph, but it's very much in line with the podcast. And it is about how to be yourself. But I want to write it in a way that does not tell someone what to do, because I don't think being yourself is a step-by-step process.
No.
I just want it to be flexible where, you can tailor your own plan, your own next step. So what that'll look like, I don't know, but that's what my intent is.
It's nice.
Yeah.
It's nice.
So, yeah. But I think it's that part around that I really, really want is that flexibility on whoever picks it up. They don't have to fit into a mold, fit into a box. They can just, have the ideas wrap around them, and whatever that looks like.
Yes, I agree with you, because everyone's different, and everyone has different processes, and everyone takes different time, and it is flexible. It's always, you always say, okay, go do this course, and you will make $20,000 in 10 days. I mean, now I'm exaggerating, but a lot of them are like that. And you look at them and you think, oh, the step-by-step process just doesn't work, because I can feel it within myself. I can feel that rejection saying, no, this isn't me. I can't do this because it's not me. It's some other random person.
Yeah, and it is, I remember thinking about, well, I think this was 6 months ago, where I was like, I'm going to start running every single day, and then I'm going to run a marathon. And in 6-7 months this year, I've probably gone out for a run, maybe 5 days. And I was listening to some interview or something on YouTube. It said essentially that you have to become the goal. So if I keep telling myself, I want to run, that doesn't help. But if I tell myself I'm a runner, and if you take the identity of that, then that eases some of the resistance, because you want to stay true to whatever your identity is. So if my identity is that, it's likely I'll get rejected, I'll take lesser or fewer chances. And if my identity is that I won't get rejected as often, maybe I'll get celebrated, then I guess you end up taking more chances, isn't it? I'm in the first bucket, or constantly scared.
Yes, yes, but that makes sense because it's the same as the person who says, "I'm really lucky," or I can create all this money, and I believe in myself," as opposed to the person who says, "You know what? I don't believe in myself," and you have the self-doubt. I'm afraid. I have anxiety. I'm fear of rejection. I'm fear of this. I fear that. I fear the other. You can have both same people with exactly the same backgrounds and everything, and the one with self-belief will just fly, and the other one will just stay stuck in a corner. So I love that concept. It's beautiful.
Yeah, for sure. I think self-belief in general, I think I've had misconceptions around self-belief, because in my head it was less about how I felt, more about what I told myself. So if I tell myself I'm a runner, of course, I'm going to go run a marathon. But if I don't feel it within me, if I don't feel it in my body, words don't really matter. So it's been such an odd distinction for me lately that self-belief is belief. Like it's within you, you feel it, you know it. It's not something that you fool yourself into.
No.
Just through words. So.
Yes. I always feel that you have to take it from your head, the words in your head, and bring them down to your heart.
Yeah, that's so true.
And then it's okay. And so you don't have that resistance. And for me, the minute I say, you have to do this, this, and this, that's it. It's the end for me. My body, I just refuse it. I reject it on every level, which is really silly, but I mean, it's obviously some childhood stuff, right?
Definitely not silly. I don't think so. I think anytime we know our instincts for all of us are so strong, we just don't know sometimes how to tap into them, right? And instincts have like this very soft, gentle voice. They never say, you must do this, you should do this, you have to do this. It's a very simple, go do this. And it's like, oh yeah, I'll just try that.
Right.
If you're not leaning into the shoulds and the must, then maybe it's a good thing.
Yes. Yes.
Yeah.
I think it is. So it's always about thinking about things. So I think, okay, today I'm going to take a walk. Oh, then I won't. Whereas I get up and I'm going for a walk now, you put on your shoes and you walk. Yeah. It's a different thing. It's always about the mind. My mind drives me insane.
Oh, does it? What do you do to manage that?
I journal.
Okay.
I journal. I meditate.
Okay.
I do yoga. I dance.
Okay.
Because sometimes it just overwhelms me, you know. Yeah. It's also the writer's mind, because my mind is so active and my imagination is so active that I create stories in my head. It's often like, what?
Yeah. So how do you balance between the creative mind that wants to create all these ideas and not living that, you know, congested head all the time?
You have to journal. So what I do is in the mornings, I have my own ritual, you know, like I do yoga, meditation, breathing sometimes, you know, breathing, all those kind of things. And then I plan my day. So I do a brain dump and then plan the day. Or just with a few things that I have to do, like, okay, I've got to do the podcast, I've got to do this, I've got to do that. And I just, you know, and then obviously the chunks, like you've got to do clients or whatever it is that you just add in, right? I find that helps me a lot because it gives me some kind of direction. If I don't do that, then I'm all over the place. Because my mind just
takes over.
So then I have to meditate and I walk a lot.
Okay. Yeah.
And that for me is very therapeutic. So you just walk.
Yeah, I've noticed that for me as well, that walking helps quite a lot to just disconnect.
Yes.
I don't know why, but it does help quite a lot.
Yes. And the mind sort of calms down and then the ideas flow up. And the answers seem to come. Yeah. So that's why it's very, you know, obviously with what I found is I do listen to a podcast sometimes, and that messes with it. So it's relaxing to walk, but it's better to be silent and just be in the moment.
Yeah, I will try that because I usually listen to something when I'm walking.
Yes. But it's because I do that, but I found that if I don't, because then you're forced to like listen, you're forced to be on the moment, you're forced to look at your environment, you're forced to just calm your brain. It's easy to be distracted with music, or music's different, like podcasts, because then your brain has to be kept active.
No, absolutely, makes perfect sense.
Right. So Shivali, tell me a bit about the podcast about break fear, find freedom, right? So tell me about a time in your life where you did break fear, and what did you learn from it, and how did you shift? If it's always one thing, you never break fear totally, because there's always other things come up, right?
No, I have to say, I really don't think I've been able to break fear. It's been the other way around, where fear has broken me multiple times, and I've given up that idea of breaking fear. I think it's more a softer approach now, where I want to work with fear as much as possible. Like, fear is ever present in my life. Anytime I try something new, anytime I want to experiment, fear is there. Fear always has a seat at the table. And I've spent many, many years ignoring fear, locking her out of the door. And that never works. No. That never works. So it's easier for me when I can hear fear, when I can feel it, when I know it's there. It's always hard, but if I slow down, I can figure out what the next step is. I can ask fear to come with me on the journey, and convince her that, we'll only go so far. But I don't think I know how to break fear. With the podcast and putting it together, putting it out there, that was very, very hard for me. Like I said, I sat on that idea for 2-3 years.
Wow, yes.
Because I was scared. And it was fear of rejection, not believing in myself, not sure what I was going to say to the world, not believing that I had a place in the world.
Yes.
And I was like, let's just stay wherever we are. It's safe, it's convenient. But I got to a point where, when you have an idea, for me, it just keeps coming back over and over again.
Yeah.
And it becomes annoying. The more I ignore it, the more loud or louder the voices in my head to do it. So I put it together. And then I didn't publish the podcast. I did a few episodes. I didn't publish it. And then ultimately published it. And I got to a point where I was like, we'll see what happens. Like, what's the worst that can happen? I still have my safety net. My parents love me. My friends won't leave me. So I think we'll survive. But it's still a challenge. Like, social media is still a challenge for me. I struggle to put my face on Instagram, for example. Because I'm constantly thinking, judgment, criticism, can I handle it? Mind gets really busy with that.
Yes.
So it is hard. It is hard.
It's that whole fear of being visible.
Yeah.
It's easier to just be invisible, but the minute you have to be visible, and because, I believe in synchronicities, right? I don't believe in coincidence. And you had to bring this podcast out. It was important. That's why it kept coming up. It was like your inner being or whatever was saying, hey, you've got to do this. You've got to do this. So it means that you've got a bigger purpose in life, right? And you have to think that by keeping yourself small and keeping yourself invisible, you're actually being selfish. So you're being selfish, Shivali. The people need to hear your voice.
I'd like to officially apologize for being selfish.
I'm sorry.
No, I'm joking. But I think the way now that I look at it is, one of the reasons why I hesitated and still get overwhelmed is because I want it to be something.
Yes.
Like I want it to be something. I want someone to tell me that, oh, this was good. I found this helpful. And the moment I step back and say, you know what, I'm just going to focus on the process, and the podcast can be whatever it's supposed to be.
Yeah.
It's like raising a child and constantly telling the child that, you know, you need to be a certain way rather than creating the environment that it can be whatever it's meant to be. So I think of my podcast like that, and my life as just having my hands in the clay, and we'll see what comes out of it. The podcast was one of the things that came out from my hands being in the clay and working on things. So, but yeah.
I love that. It's always about expectations as well, you know. Sometimes you just have to let those go, because that's what keeps you stuck as well. And then you're rowing upstream. It's so hard to row upstream.
Yeah. And, you know, it's really challenging to say or practice that, what I've just said, to let go of whatever the outcome is, to not force expectations. It is really, really hard because, and I talk about this in one of the podcast episodes, that a lot of times we link outcome to our own worth. So if the outcome isn't great, then I'm not great.
Yes.
Right.
Yes.
So if the podcast is tiny, then I'm tiny. And so, you know, it's hard to, or it takes a while to just pause, detach from that idea and say, it is what it is. I am who I am, not connected.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes, but it's very hard. I think of, who was it? I think it was Kahil Gibran, about children. And he, you know, he's The Prophet's one of my favorite books, right?
Yeah.
And he talks about how by the time children are 18, we need to be able to release them and let them start living their own lives. And I'm not saying throw them into the street. I'm not saying that, but we should be able to be expansive and allow children to be who they need to be. They're not supposed to be us or whoever. And I think that's very much the same with these projects that we have, like the podcast, like me with this podcast as well. It becomes like a baby, but the baby needs to grow up, you know, and you need to allow it to let it go and grow up. And I'm talking like this for myself right now, you know, it's the same kind of thing, but it's so hard.
Yeah.
It's so hard to do.
It is definitely challenging. And it is a practice. It is a daily practice of letting go, of not getting tied up in those expectations. But some days I do get caught in that. So, yeah.
Well, that's part of being human, right?
Absolutely.
And that's part of the beautiful experience that we're having here on Earth.
Well, that is true.
So that's good. Now, what about freedom? Have you tasted freedom?
Yes, a ton of freedom. But I think, before I even talk about how freedom, what that means for me, I think I want to say that freedom is something very personal, and how you define freedom may be very different from how I define it, how someone else defines it. So whatever definition of freedom you have, stick with that.
Yes.
So I've had a lot of freedom. I was a very crazy, wild child. And my parents, I guess they had no option because I would, run around and create chaos. So in that sense, as a child, I had a lot of freedom. I got into trouble quite a lot. I've had freedom through the careers and the work that I've had, through the money I make, through, the podcast, what I get to say. There's a lot of freedom in all of that. There's some outlet for some expression to come through in all of those things. But I think it's also perspective. Like, I can very quickly look at my podcast and say, what a trap. I have to write every single day. I have to record. I have to edit. And it's a trap. Or I can look at it and say, this is freeing, because it's a creative outlet for me. I can say what I feel like. So I think a lot of it is perspective. And I've learned and taught myself to have that perspective, because I've looked at life and a lot of different aspects of life as trap, especially work.
Yes.
Which I don't want to look at my work as a trap. It's still an expression of who I am, regardless of what project, what work I'm doing. And that is freeing for me.
Yes. Yes, I love it. And it's all about perspective again. Yes. Yeah. So that's why one of the, it's from trapped to freedom. And you can, and it's just changed. So if you, today you see it as a trap, tomorrow you see it as freedom, you'll see the difference in your life and this perspective, and the difference even in the way you feel, right?
Yeah.
Which is so important. And then that changes everything again.
Yeah, I think absolutely. It's how you feel. So you can choose to make yourself feel miserable by saying I'm trapped, or you can, change that and feel better. And sometimes we are in a trap. Maybe you're in a job that, you don't like, or it doesn't make you happy. Maybe you're in a relationship that doesn't make you happy. It's fine, even if it's a trap or a trap. But can you find something good about it? Can you find your next step? Can you find what needs to change?
Yes.
Because, everything's evolving, everything's dynamic.
All the time. And you'll find that even if you're in a job you hate, if you reframe it and you find something that you like you were saying, suddenly the job becomes easier, and you might learn to love the job, right?
Yeah.
The same with a relationship. Find the good instead of finding the bad all the time, and see how that changes things. And then you've always got a choice. You've always got a choice. You either stay or you go.
Yeah.
At the end of the day, it's always your choice.
That's what power is, that you always have a choice. You always have a choice.
Yes.
Which is, because a lot of us have that power. I don't think we realize it.
I know. Yes, for sure. I mean, especially when you look like on social media, for example, some of the posts, you think, whoa, people, just sit down and realize what options you've got and what choices you've always got a choice. Even in a very bad situation, you just need to choose to take it.
Yeah, absolutely. I will say, on changing perspective, and this is just, I think, my experience of growing up with the idea of having a better perspective. For me, it felt like I have to fool myself. And I was like, you're lying to yourself. And I fought that idea, because I was like, I'm not going to lie to myself. And then you realize, if lying to myself in the short term makes things easier, like, I still have perspective. I know that I need to move on to the next thing. But do I want this one project to make my life miserable for the next month while I figure out next steps? Probably not. So it's okay to fool yourself if you have to, while you figure out your next step, while you figure out where your boundaries are.
Yes.
But I did struggle with that idea for quite a bit.
That is quite a, but I suppose if you are doing it as well, and you're doing it to sounds like a manipulation now, and the words, but you know what I'm saying, so that you can get yourself through whatever you have to get through to get to the other side, then it's okay. But if you keep doing that, then you'll find that it stagnates your growth on some level.
Yeah. I guess it's being hopeful. Maybe lying wasn't the best choice of words, but finding hope, even in the worst of circumstances.
Yes, I like that. I like that. Shivali, I could speak to you all day. Tell us a bit where we can find you.
You can find me on Instagram at Unbox Yourself, and on TikTok at Shivali Beakta. And obviously you can look up the podcast, Unbox Yourself, on Spotify and Apple.
Very cool. And of course, all those details will be in the description box, all the links and everything. So that'll be cool. Tell us, What advice would you give your future self?
What advice would I give my future self? Is to know that all power lies within me. And it's okay. Like we'll find a way. We've got all the answers within us. Let's just chill, sail away.
I like that. I prefer the sailing than the rowing.
Yeah.
Thank you so much, Shivali. This has been an honor and a pleasure to have you on the podcast.
Much.
And we will have to meet again just to see how far you are on your Unbox podcast. And yes, thank you so much.
Absolutely. Thank you.
Bye. Bye, everyone. See you soon.